The Grand Plaza's crystal chandeliers cast elegant shadows across the wedding reception as I adjusted my simple navy dress. Not designer but well-made, like everything else I owned. Table 27, my sister Christina smirked, pointing to a corner near the kitchen doors. That's where they put the budget guests. I glanced at my seating card. After 15 years of building my hospitality empire in Asia, I'd returned home just in time for our cousin Maria's wedding. A wedding, as it happened, being held in one of my newest acquisitions, though the family didn't know that yet. Still doing that hotel work overseas? Christina asked, adjusting her maid of honor dress. Managing reservations or something? Something like that, I smiled, watching the staff's practiced movements. They hadn't been informed of my arrival. I preferred to observe operations naturally first. At least you made it back for the wedding, Mom sighed, approaching with her signature look of elegant disappointment. Though you could have helped with the planning. Christina handled everything with the hotel. I bet she did. I'd seen the contract, overpriced and underdelivered, thanks to a sales manager who would be having a very interesting performance review tomorrow. The Plaza's one of the best hotels in the city, Christina boasted. Not that you'd know about luxury properties, Elena. How's that hostel work going? If she only knew about the 30 luxury hotels I owned across 3 continents. Or the fact that the Grand Plaza was just the latest addition to my portfolio. It's going well, I replied, noting several service inefficiencies that would need addressing. The staff training clearly needed an overhaul. Well enough to afford a better dress? Mom whispered, eyeing my non-designer label. Christina's Vera Wang was featured in Modern Bride. My phone buzzed. Another alert about our latest acquisition in Dubai. A $2 billion property that would redefine luxury hospitality in the Middle East. But here I was, being pitted at table 27. The Plaza doesn't usually host such modest guests, Christina continued, watching me sip water instead of champagne. But Maria felt obligated to invite everyone. The hotel manager rushed past, frantically directing staff. He hadn't recognized me yet. None of them had. The acquisition had been finalized through proxies. The ownership transition kept deliberately quiet. Did you know they have a 2-year waiting list for weddings here? Mom bragged. Christina's connections barely got us in. They don't usually work with our budget, but... The owner made an exception? I suggested mildly, checking another message about the Dubai property. Exactly. Christina beamed. Though no one seems to know who owns it now. Some overseas investment group. Rivera Global Holdings, actually. My company. The one I'd built from scratch while they thought I was just working in hotels. Speaking of work, Mom started. Christina's husband knows someone hiring front desk staff. I'm doing fine, I said quietly, watching the wedding planner struggle with a seating crisis. Tomorrow the entire staff would learn that the guest they'd banished to table 27 was actually their boss. The wedding reception was in full swing when the first hint of my identity surfaced. A junior manager was scrolling through emails on his tablet when he froze, looking between his screen and table 27 with growing horror. Ms. Rivera? He approached cautiously, tablet shaking. Elena Rivera. I nodded, watching Christina pause mid-dance to stare at the interruption of her budget table. There's been a terrible mistake, he stammered. The ownership transition documents just came through with your photo. You're the new owner, I confirmed, standing as the hotel's general manager rushed over, his face ashen. Though I must say, table 27 has provided an interesting perspective on our service standards. The music seemed to fade as whispers spread across the ballroom. Christina's perfectly curled hair wilted as she watched the hotel's entire management team converge on her embarrassing sister. Madam, the general manager was nearly crying. If we had known the owner was attending, you would have treated me differently? I raised an eyebrow. Like you treat all guests at table 27? Mom's champagne glass slipped, spilling across her designer dress as more details emerged. The daughter she thought needed help finding front desk work owned not just the Grand Plaza, but 30 other luxury properties across the globe. Your sister owns the hotel? Maria's new husband whispered to Christina, who had collapsed into a nearby chair. Hotels, plural, my assistant corrected, appearing with a portfolio. The Plaza is just the latest addition to Ms. Rivera's collection. Though after tonight's service observations, Some management changes may be necessary. The wedding planner who dismissed my suggestions earlier now stood frozen, watching her career flash before her eyes. The sales manager who'd overcharged my family was attempting to blend into the wallpaper. But you work in hotels, Mom stammered. I own them, I corrected, accepting a tablet with the plaza's current performance metrics, along with resorts, restaurants, and luxury properties across 3 continents. Though based on tonight's observations, the plaza needs significant improvements. Christina's connections for booking the venue suddenly seemed very small as the staff scrambled to relocate me to the owner's private table, which I declined. I prefer table 27, I smiled. It's given me excellent insight into how we treat our budget guests. The general manager looked ready to faint. The table assignments were a terrible mistake. No, I cut in smoothly. They were very illuminating. As was the overpriced wedding package, the subpar service, and the clear hierarchy of guest treatment. All things that will be addressed in tomorrow's management meeting. Mom's carefully maintained composure cracked as she watched the hotel staff defer to her underachieving daughter. All those years overseas were spent building Rivera Global Holdings, I nodded, pulling up our company's portfolio on the ballroom's display screens. Currently valued at $12 billion with properties in 14 countries. The wedding guests stood stunned as images of my luxury hotels filled the screens. Each property more exclusive than the plaza, each one evidence of what I'd built while they thought I was just working in hospitality. The Dubai property opens next month, my assistant added. Though after tonight's observations, perhaps the plaza requires your immediate attention. Christina's face matched her wilting bouquet as she realized her connections for booking the venue had actually been negotiating with her sister's employees. Now, I said, checking the time, shall we discuss the service improvements needed? Or should we let the bride enjoy her wedding in the hotel she didn't know her cousin owned? The night was far from over and I had standards to address. The ballroom's atmosphere shifted dramatically as the staff scrambled to correct their earlier dismissiveness. The manager who'd assigned me to table 27 was frantically reviewing security footage, probably counting how many times he'd walked past the owner without acknowledging her. Your hotel portfolio, Christina's husband called from across the room, his investment banker instincts kicking in. It includes the Singapore Lotus? The hotel your firm tried to acquire last month? I smiled. Yes. Along with the Monaco Grand and the Dubai Crescent. Though those were purchased through shell companies, we prefer to stay quiet about ownership transitions. Christina's face went from pale to ashen as she realized her husband's biggest failed deals had been blocked by her budget sister. But you never mentioned, Mom began weakly, that I was building the fastest-growing luxury hotel group in Asia? I finished, accepting another tablet displaying our latest acquisition targets. You were all too busy bragging about Christina's wedding planning business to ask. The wedding planner in question was now hovering nervously nearby, probably realizing her biggest client was actually my employee. The service inefficiencies, I continued, pulling up the plaza's performance metrics, will need immediate attention. Starting with our policy on guest classifications and table assignments. The general manager nodded frantically, making notes. Of course, Ms. Rivera. We had no idea. That's rather the point, I cut in smoothly. Every guest should be treated like the owner, not just those in designer dresses. Mom's social circle had gathered at the edges of the dance floor, watching their friend's disappointing daughter reveal herself as the power behind their favorite luxury venues. Your sister's little hotel job, one of them whispered to Christina. It's actually a global luxury hospitality empire, my assistant finished. One that just acquired 3 more properties this morning. The contracts are waiting for your signature, Ms. Rivera. Christina's perfectly planned wedding spectacle had been upstaged by the revelation that her embarrassing sister owned the venue, and about 50 others like it. The plaza's renovation plans, I announced, pulling up the designs on the ballroom screens, will begin next week. Though perhaps we should wait until after the wedding to discuss the complete management overhaul. The staff that had dismissed me earlier now stood at attention, watching their owner calmly sip water at the budget table while reviewing their employment futures on her tablet. Now, I said, noting another service failure, Should we discuss why the couple at table 28 has been waiting 10 minutes for their entrees? Or would you prefer I continue my anonymous observations? The night was still young and I had an entire hotel's worth of improvements to plan. As the wedding reception wound down, I stood in the plaza's private owner's office. My office, watching the city lights sparkle through floor-to-ceiling windows. The hotel's senior staff stood nervously behind me, while my family hovered near the door, still processing the evening's revelations. The plaza will be undergoing significant changes, I announced, pulling up the renovation plans on the wall-mounted displays. Starting with our service standards and guest classification policies. The screens filled with images of my other properties. The Singapore Lotus with its floating gardens, the Monaco Grand's underwater suites, the Dubai Crescent rising like a golden moon above the desert. From my position at the window, I could see Christina in the reflection, her maid of honor dress suddenly seeming overdressed among the subtle elegance of true luxury hospitality. Mom's social bragging about her successful daughter's wedding planning business had fallen silent. Your sister's hotels, the general manager explained reverently to my family, set the global standard for luxury hospitality. Faz's was rather behind the times. A situation that will be remedied immediately, I added, turning to face the room. Though perhaps table 27 should remain exactly as it is, as a reminder of how not to treat any guest. The staff shifted uncomfortably as I pulled up the evening service footage. Sometimes the best lessons come from the most uncomfortable moments. The girl who was just working in hotels, I concluded, meeting my family's stunned gazes, was actually redefining what luxury hospitality means. Because sometimes the greatest achievements happen quietly, far from designer dresses and social media posts. The night lights of the city played across the office walls. My office, my hotel, my empire. The quiet sister in the simple navy dress had just revealed herself as the most powerful person in the room.